All right, and we are back now on the Spoilercast for Nifft by Michael Shea. And just as a reminder, we are going to be heavy into the spoilers. So if you have not read it and don't want spoilers, then you should stop listening right now. If you have read it and you want spoilers, or if you haven't read it but you want spoilers for some reason, then feel free to listen. Yeah. All right, so Sam, first question. Which story was your favorite and why?
Oh man, I loved them all, but my favorite by far was The Fishing of the Demon Sea. I just love the descriptions of all the demons. They're just so inventive. They're just insane. I kept writing them down. It was just such a weird, dark, creative world. And I love that, like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. And even as they're descending into the world, Nifft says to Barner, you realize, of course, Barner, that it is simply not possible that we're actually doing this.
Yeah, that's so good.
They're even disbelieving that they're there. It's just this great moment of reflection. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Well, first, real fast, I would agree that story was really great. Mostly for the underworld parts, but maybe my favorite part of the book is that story begins with Nifft and Varner on this like medieval torture execution device. And they ask if they have any final words. And Nifft says he wants to say three things. And just the first part, he says, "First, I cried. I wish to express my regret that I did not have more than a week in this city, for then I could have given all you kind men bigger horns than your cattle have. Alas, I have cuckolded scarcely more than a dozen of you. I would have worked faster, but your kind women smell so much like stockyards that I could only stand to serve two or three of you a day."
I forgot about that.
It's so good. It's
so the flowery prose. That's what we love about this book.
That's right. Yeah, I know. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
great. It was a great kickoff to the book. And also, it feels so classic, just like our heroes are, fade in and they are in the stocks.
Yeah. And there was some moment, I'm just like looking at some of my quotes where maybe I'm underselling Lean's, like, that was then they're kind of bargaining, right? And the king's like, "What, you're not going to go? Like, I'm saving your life." And he said, Nifft said, "A man too ignorant to know that there are many things in the world worse than death on the Strapado is not likely to be a very useful man on a difficult exploit." There's a lot of great stuff. I did really love that story, and I agree that the underworld scenes were just like really intense. That made me think, it's obviously very different, but it almost made me think of like Dante and like, yeah. I'm a little torn between two different stories. I really enjoyed the first two. Quite a bit. I think ultimately I liked the first story the best. I did, there's a point in the second story where they're fishing for the pearls, and I loved that whole thing with the polyps. I thought that was so cool, which is why I'm concerned. But I really like story one. There's just so much about the aesthetics of it that just really worked for me. Like, I love Dallas M coming out of the rock as a skeleton, and then like the flesh coming over her, and the maggots come in, and the maggots form these like giant breasts, and she's just it's just like so like 80s horror vibe that was so cool.
It felt like it could be the cover of some hair metal album or something.
Yeah, 100%. Right? Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was so into it. And then like wrestling the lizard man just to be able to then get to the underworld, and
you can come with me, but first you gotta fight my lizard man.
Yeah, that's so good.
It was so out of nowhere. I loved it.
And to that point, I was just like, "Oh, well, this lizard man is pretty formidable, but I know 100% that Nifft is going to win somehow." I'm excited to see how. And then when they are on their way, they stop. They have to stop at all these checkpoints and give some kind of like flesh tax to pass. So like Nifft cuts off part of his ear, and I just really loved it. And I'm a sucker for, we talked about it as a like allusion to Romeo and Juliet maybe, or something like that, but just like the suicide pact, and then the question of the guy being like, yeah, but just because you get caught up in this moment and the emotion of it, like you have to follow, you know what I mean? Like, what if I change my mind? And it's like, I don't know. There were just a lot of it that I liked. I thought it was really fun.
I really liked it too. I'll give you that. As soon as what's her name came out of the earth, I got sucked in. I got sucked in hard. Yeah.
I feel there's a lot of consensus amongst reviewers that the fourth story was a little bit weaker than the other three. I don't know if I necessarily. I thought there were some interesting, like, higher order questions in that book, and I like that it was a little bit sci-fi. I think it might have been just that Nifft is kind of like step back in that, like he's more of an observer, and so I'm just like it moved a little more slowly. It kind of unfolded a little more slowly, I feel like, whereas the other ones he's like constantly under threat and having to react, and so I don't know if I necessarily thought it was weaker, but it was maybe a little bit less fun than the other three.
I agree with that. I would say it's probably my least favorite. I still enjoyed it, but for the reasons you're mentioning, yes, it wasn't as fun to read.
Yeah, for sure.
It had really interesting parts and really cool imagery, and it was wacky in its own right.
Yeah.
But it just was, you got four great stories here. One of them's got to be weaker.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then let's just a few questions to dig through from these stories. The first one I kind of already mentioned. Is it just to hold someone to a suicide pact they made as a teenager?
I think that's the big philosophical question of this story. I was racking this one's the one I had the hardest time kind of figuring out what is he trying to ask here, but I think that's really the question. And I know you were just teaching Romeo and Juliet today, so
Yeah.
great timing. I mean, I think I would say no, but I love the framing of this story. They go through 75% of the story where they've only talked to the woman scorned who's in the underworld, saying like, you have to get my vengeance on this man. And so we as the readers only know like, oh yeah, this guy, this lying cheat, how dare he? How dare you? So we're I don't know, but yeah, I was like mad with her.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then you actually meet the guy, and he's a chill dude, and he's like, man, we were like 17.
Yeah, yeah,
I would have said anything to get with you. Like,
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting that like I feel like then they like finally talk it out, and then she's just kind of like, okay, well, I'm done with you, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting question. I think like, I like Romeo and Juliet is, I mean, for obvious reasons, is what you think of, and you just think of like how destructive that was. Of course, you think like, well, if one person is dead. At that point, like, is the second person bound by that? I mean, you can't say yes. I would say no.
I would also say no for our readers out there who are questioning this, weighing this decision in their lives. Please don't.
I mean, the idea that it might change the calculus if I knew for a fact that I was going to have to face them in the underworld.
It's true. This is a world where that's a real possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do think I actually think a death pact is a little bit of a different thing. Like to me, a life pact is something that you have to hold. Like I was reading a news story like a year ago about a couple that was in an elderly home, and the spouse was suffering from dementia and all this stuff, and the other spouse cancer, and ended up on a trip to long story short, one of them ended up committing suicide. And of course, far be it for me to judge from a million miles away, not knowing these people, but I remember just being like, man, like, how can you abandon your partner like that? Like you guys are like in this life pact and you're going through the hardest time, and like that's the time that you need to like hang in there, But yeah, a death pact, I feel like you're allowed to change your mind on that one.
Again, for our listeners out there, if you're thinking about this, don't take our word for it. Please call someone.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And also, we're making it sound like so heavy. Like this story was super fun. This story was amazing.
So fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. Okay, so that's our first heavy question. I think we nailed that one.
Yeah, that one has a more clear answer.
Yeah. Next one. Okay, so this is from the third story, I believe.
The second story.
Yes. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Volvola? Great.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I skipped down one. Yeah. Security versus freedom. Is Volvola a good guy or a bad guy, and whose side are we on?
I don't really have a good answer for you here. I think this is a question that we all face all the time. And even in a democracy, you're giving up some freedom, some rights. You're offering sacrifices for security, for organization. The Volvala story is really, it's a metaphor for that. So, you know, when you think of the security versus freedom thing, you think about like fascism. Will that give us law and order in these extremes versus anarchy? And it's a much more mixed, complicated question that I don't know that there's a real answer to. I would say it's worth some sacrifices. Would I allow literal sacrifices for security? I think I might like to take my chances, but I'll pay taxes.
Yeah.
What did you think about this?
I also will pay taxes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. I think it's really hard to give any sort of like answer that's like a broad principle on that one, because it depends so much on the exact situation, right? Like what are the threats to the security? What are the freedoms being taken? I do agree with you that human sacrifice is, or you know, whatever beings these are, you know, that would have to be really dire for me to be on board there. It rang a little like sacrifice in more ancient civilizations, where it's like, oh, there's a divine element to this, like there was something glorious about this, where they were saying that the kings were like being immortalized, but it was just like they're down in the basement, like, you know,
getting drained.
Yeah. And even like, you know, they have them up in the special room and everything beforehand, but they're just like, you know, they're incapacitated completely.
I thought this story did a great job handling that kind of juxtaposing imagery of like what they're trying to show as, right, like you're saying, this great ornate ceremony and tradition versus the reality of what's happening and how grotesque it is that this vampire is feeding. But also this is their system of government that it works. So you're really faced with like, these people are doing great. Is it worth it? Like they've had the most peace and prosperity that they've ever had.
Right. And Margold poses that question early on of like, before the story of, you know, yeah, like, well, let's look at some of these other kingdoms where this isn't happening and how much death and bloodshed is happening around them. Yeah. This story is the one where Nifft is awesome, so I didn't actually care, but I was sort of like, man, Nifft, you're going far here. Like, why not just stop from those polyp pearls, you know? I don't know if it was worth like sneaking in there and doing all this stuff and blackmailing the vampire queen.
He just took the ball and he ran with it.
He really did. I did really like the ending. You know, when they're up in the air and his only option is to drop one of the bags of pearls, and he's talking about like, well, this is still pretty good, and you know, it's probably better because if I had the two bags, who knows how it would have turned out with me. Like basically like all the debauchery that would have come from it.
Like this is healthier for me.
Yeah. I really liked that ending. That was good.
Yeah, and that's I mean, I feel like that's his character in a nutshell. It's emblematic. He's just thinking about the money. The important thing for him, the important detail is I had to give up some of my money. And
yeah, 100%. Not that he like almost just like tanked this whole civilization.
Yeah, that was all just extortion, you know, it was all part of the game.
Love this third question. I just loved it conceptually in the third story. Where do we come from? Are we descendants of hell rather than heaven?
Same. I loved it. I mean, there's no answer, but I just thought it's such a neat reversal of, a lot of faiths on earth believe that we are children of God or of heaven, or we're, son of man, son of God, all that stuff. But in this story just turns it all on its face. What if we are the highest, most evolved form of demons? What if we came from the other way around? I've got a quote for this too. Here we go. Was this the yolk of the egg of life? Are men the highest climbing descendants of that deep, ultimate germ of darkness and horror? Are we the last, the frailest, and yet the least dark, highest soaring of all that grim line? The demons are not our ancestors, we are theirs. The greeds and lusts, the wealth of horrors here, are not the archetypes of our own, they are the derivatives, the dreadful perfectings of all the evil that men have spawned and nourished. Call man a great roasting beast, spitted and turning above the fire of his own unending cruelty. The things of this world, then, and of those yet farther down, are the drippings of the tortured giant, man. As I'm reading that, I'm realizing this is two quotes that I've mushed together that are saying opposite things.
Yeah, but it's still awesome.
It's still awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
The first one is saying, are we the most evolved form of demons?
Right.
And the second part is posing, I love that, man, a great roasting beast, spitted and turning above the fire of his own unending cruelty.
Yeah.
Like it is the cream rising, sinking to the bottom, rather. That's what the demons are.
Yeah, they're
the
like
cream of cruelty.
they're like distilled from us.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's so cool. I love it. It makes me think a lot about how I'm not someone who grew up religious, but when I have read about religious practices in history classes and stuff, or just talk to people who are religious, you hear a lot about how like a lot of these practices are put in place because the nature of us is like to be sinful, like perpetually, right? Like women must be covered because like if they're not, the men are not going to be able to control themselves, right? Like there's just all these things where it's like, oh, okay, well, it just made me think of that because I'm like, well, I guess that a lot of these beliefs that center around us being these heavenly beings, the way that they are built out are all on the assumption that like if this is not in place, we're just going to be like completely depraved.
Right, that's the assumption that isn't said.
Yeah, which obviously supports either that we are evolved from demons or that demons are, the essence of us. You know what I mean?
Right. Right, but there's a much more direct connection there. Yeah, I mean, there's the whole original sin thing too, even in the Bible, that it's all our fault.
Right.
But it's much. I feel like this is a more complex view of that because the whole concept of original sin is just like it's our fault, we're not perfect and we only have ourselves to blame. But this is more like an evolutionary argument. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, no, me too. And it's the kind of thing that could be easily dismissed as absurd, but it's like, well, I fail to see how it's more absurd than the argument going in the other direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that this, on this wacky adventure that we get taken on, there's just this, this little page of musings, and then it just keeps moving on, and it's never addressed again.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, that really, I might have to upgrade my review to 5 posits. I forgot about this.
Yeah.
I'll see.
Yeah. I'm staying strong, man. This is my first time ever, so.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stay, you're staying strong, I'll stay strong. Solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely. So next question is from the fourth story, The Goddess in the Glass, and about magic and science. Can magic or divinity exist, or is it simply technology that we do not yet understand? Is something still magical if we understand it?
I think this is an age-old question.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think even the Pope, maybe not the current one, but the previous one weighed in on this and said maybe this is all science we don't understand. I should edit that part out because I don't want to look at it. But it's a really interesting question. And yeah. I don't know the answer, but I like to think about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a universe that has such clear laws, it would not surprise me if there are things we do not yet understand. I think it's clear. Yeah. There's plenty going on in this universe.
Yeah.
That we do not understand. We don't have the rules for. Maybe we never will. And I think that's what makes it fascinating.
Yeah, and I think, obviously some of what was going on in that story was of another world. And, I don't know anything that I have evidence for in our world that is, but I would agree with you. Think about how much stuff was seen as magic 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, and now we understand exactly what, like the regularity with which the tides come and, things like that. Like we understand it all now. And we know that you don't need to like sacrifice anyone in order to keep the river from, not flooding. We just understand all of that much better now. But things still, like new medicines that are developed and things like that. Like obviously there are lots of people working on them that understand them. But when I hear about them, like that feels like magic to suddenly be able to prevent disease, cure disease, etc.
Yeah, and that's not discounting faith at all. I think I think one of the sort of flip side of this is science is also magical and divine, and maybe they are the same thing.
I get what you're saying. I mean, even most fantasy books that we would read have pretty clear laws to the magic systems that exist within them, right? If there is magic out there, it has to be made of or fueled by something, right? And there's only so many elements in the universe. And so I would imagine anything like that could be understood, with the right technology and the right background information and the right sort of like progression of study.
Yes. Yeah, I have a bit of a beef with hard magic systems because of this concept. Because to me, hard magic systems are science; they're not magic. I agree that these forms of magic they're often systematic. There are rules whether we see them or not. But I don't like there's this increasing trend where the magic in a fantasy world is so systematized and cataloged and described that you can predict the exact result of what's going to happen based on what magic is being used. And I enjoy books like this. I'm enjoying Dungeon Crawler Carl right now, and I feel like that's emblematic of a hard magic system or quote unquote magic. I lost track of all the different powers and abilities, but
Yeah.
there's very, very explicit rules about what every single power does. But that's not magic to me. That's just another form of technology.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I always imagine that as being science because I see that as almost like a sci-fi because it's like an alien invasion.
Yeah, it is. It is more sci-fi. You're right.
But I do agree with you. I guess my beef is less philosophical and just that I tend to find books like that. I tend to not love that kind of writing. If the rules are hard and I can figure it out by reading what happens, then that's one thing. But like, I feel like sometimes it's like I'm like, man, like I don't need this to be all explained to me. Although it doesn't bother me in Dungeon Crawler Carl for whatever reason, I'm finding that those books are just fun enough that I don't mind it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind. But this podcast is not about Dungeon Crawler Carl.
No, you are right. What book are we talking about?
What is this podcast about?
Favorite description of demons from this?
Yes. I really liked, I mean, there's a lot of them, but the one that really got me where I was like, holy shit, I didn't even see that coming was the gallows trap. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
Where they just see this gallows in the middle of the ocean. And then, was it people fly over, like demons fly onto the gallows or something?
Yeah.
And then the big mouth just closes up and eats it.
So good.
It's
so
like an
good.
anglerfish's lure. It was insane.
Yeah,
I love that.
That was wild. My favorite description was of just the larger ocean, but I'll get to that in a second. I think my favorite. So the thing I liked the most from that story was just like how often there were like humans put in really painful like their body parts were used in like really painful arrangements, and like I'm not even describing it right, but.
There was that one where it's like a wall where a person is totally spread out across the wall, like all their organs in separate places, but still alive and connected.
Yeah, so wild. Okay, here we go. Ready? Some grottos, for example, were densely carpeted with victims whose faces alone retained their human form. The rest of their bodies, everted and structurally transformed, now radiated from each face's perimeter in wormy coronas. They resembled giant sea anemones. The souls within their faces still, all too eloquently, lived, while every vermiculous grotto of them had its demonic gardener, an obese vermilion starfish shape, all scabbed and barnacles with eyes, and which inched the slathering musci of its undersides across the quasi-human meadow. Each threatened face expected its embrace with a piteous look of loathing and foreknowledge. So good.
A piteous look of loathing and foreknowledge. It's just perfect.
My favorite quote from this was the description of the underworld sea. They get to this underworld and this is all an enclosed world, and he talks about how you can see that the colors are kind of fake and the lighting is kind of fake. And the ocean, it looks very artificial. And so they look out at the ocean and it says, it did truly ravish the senses, And so it was only belatedly you felt the horror of the enclosure of so huge a sea. For though the light that broke through the clouds might suggest earthly sunset colors, it was quickly recognizable as a demonic imitation, more garish, less subtly shaded than the sun's true dying radiance. Such subearthly luminosity in varying hues had been our sky for weeks now. Never a real sky, of course, never a transparent revelation of endless space, but always a kind of bright paint masking the universal ceiling of stone imprisoning this world. Now, a true ocean is the sky's open floor. That's the feeling men love in it, the reason they venture upon it, apart from gain or exploration. But this bottled sea, for all its terrible vastness, gave you not the awe of liberation, but its black opposite, the awe of drear imprisonment's infinitude. So good.
Drear imprisonment's infinitude.
Yeah, so
it's
good.
So claustrophobic.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, well, we kind of talked about this in the first part, but would this book have been more interesting if Nifft and Barner were slightly less effective at their work? I'm still coming down on no. It would have been less fun, I think.
Yeah, you know what? When I was initially thinking about this, I was thinking yes. I think I would enjoy it still if they weren't as good. If they weren't perfect, if they screwed up more, I think that would be fun, but it would make the story more about them. And the story isn't really about them somehow. They're at the center of these stories, but it's about the crazy shit that happens.
Right.
They're kind of just like the centerpiece, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, totally. I agree. I think this question, because I've seen this in a few reviews, to me, this is more of like applying like today's literary preferences to the 80s. Is Nifft a moral character? Is anyone in this book a moral character?
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about this. The only character, the only exception to them being purely self-interested that I can recall was when they helped out that wizard that was trapped in the underworld. They didn't need to do that, and I think in maybe that little bit of morality can be excused because the other guy they were sent to save was just so annoying.
Yeah,
that maybe
Wimfrit.
Yeah, Wimfrit. What a name! Oh man, he was the worst.
He really sucked.
Yeah, he just sucked. That guy sucked. Yeah, but they did a good thing there.
Yeah, and not only so they saved Guildmirth, but they also the guy who worked for the rod master, who had been Wimfrit's tutor, they end up arranging ahead of time for him to be freed also. So yeah, he definitely does like look out for people who he feels like align with kind of his code, you know?
He's not amoral. He sees people who are getting hurt who seem like they're upstanding people. He sees injustice. That's the word I'm looking for. He sees injustice and he wants to do something. But it's not his main motivation. It's sort of on the side, like while I'm doing this.
Yeah. There's a Hunter Thompson quote that I thought about for this. I don't know why, but it's in a closed society where everyone's guilty, the only crime is getting caught. And in a world of thieves, the only final sin is stupidity, which it doesn't line up perfectly with Nifft, but it's just sort of like all of these people that we see him going up against, right? Whether it's the vampire queen, whether it's the rod master, these people are all, to me, like very morally flawed and guilty of other transgressions. And so it almost becomes like Nifft is a thief, but I would say he's more moral to me than anyone else we meet in this story. But ultimately, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, this story is not about Nifft at all. Even though he's the protagonist, I see it as like he's a stationary object and the world is kind of moving around him.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do you feel any sense of closure from this book? And do you feel like it's greater than the sum of its parts?
Yes, and yes. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I thought it was we've talked about how this was organized. I liked how it was tied together with commentary from good old Shag Margold. You know, without that, I don't think this would have felt very connected. And I liked the through line with the bigger philosophical questions. I thought that was cool. There was enough here to tie it together to make it feel cohesive. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree. It's definitely more cohesive than a normal short story collection. I feel, as you said, I think because of the Shag Margold stuff. Yeah. Do I feel closure? Not necessarily, but I feel like I guess so. I mean, I feel like I read a really fun stories and a really fun book. And again, like I said, the thing I'll think about and the thing I'll say when I recommend it to people is those really fun parts, the cool demons, the descriptions of the underworld, the funny lines that happen. And so for that, I would say, yes, that stuff all does come together in a great way. This is not going to like be super thought provoking for me.
Same. Yeah, I think I didn't really get closure. I just didn't care. I didn't feel a need for closure.
Right.
It's a fun romp. It was
Yeah.
ultimately just fun.
Yeah, totally. It's
Yeah.
like watching a comedy movie.
Yeah, it was a great time. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed this book.
Yeah. Agreed. Um, Anything else you want to touch on?
I mean, I could go back and forth reading quotes forever, but I think I'm good.
Yeah, same.
I feel like we've talked this book through.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it for Nifft. Reminder that we will see you next time for Samuel R. Delaney's Babel 17. Widely available, paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook, whatever you want. All right. Take care, everyone.
Take care.